Rain is one of the most cinematic elements for a scene. Like snow or fog, rain adds complexity to the shot that gives it more depth and interest. And it just looks so damn cool on screen, which is why Hollywood has been using it since the early days to great effect. But they are always using practical rain created by rain machines on the day. You slap a little backlight on that and you're golden. We've shown how to make a DIY rain wand in the first year of Film Riot, back when I was shooting on a home video camera, but that sort of thing still works great. But the problem is the difficulty in adding an element like rain into a no-budget shoot. It needs more crew members, space, and the extra time to make it work. And with a wide shot like the one we wanted, things get far more complicated. So the solution we turned to was digital rain, taking a completely dry shot like this and turning it into this. To shoot this, we are just outside of our office with a handful of lights and a hose. Now the hose wasn't used on the big shots, but it was used on these shots of Josh so that the wipers had something to interact with on the windshield, and we could get that interaction with the window and the reflection that you see on his face inside. The problem we ran into was we ended up shooting on a night that was incredibly windy, so where the water ended up going shifted constantly throughout the shots. Sometimes it made it look like we were in the middle of a typhoon, so we'd have to wait for a lull and then roll. Most importantly, we used the hose to wet down the ground. If the ground had been dry for this wide shot, the whole shot wouldn't have worked. Plus, when it's wet down, we're getting these nice reflections as well, so it adds to the shot in more ways than one.
I look like a Boston construction worker.
I just look like a trash bag.
But with our coverage locked, we'll move into After Effects. For the digital assets that we're using, we are using these practical stock rain assets from Action VFX. Even though we aren't using rain in camera, these assets were shot practically, and that helps a ton to stay away from that digital look. Action VFX has all kinds of great assets, so definitely check them out in the notes below. But first, we're going to create a new comp with the footage, and depending on the layout of your scene, you're going to want to roto any foreground elements as their own layers so we can place things behind them later. With our shot, we only have Emily, so we're going to duplicate the footage to use as a rotoed layer for her. Double click and use the roto brush tool, draw inside your actor to select them. Holding the Alt key will allow you to erase sections that you don't want. Once she's all selected, we increase the feather slightly, then press play. Now roto brush will go through and roto each frame for you. And once it's complete, we can play through the results. And since we don't need any changes here, we're going to freeze to lock the effect in. Now back in the comp, we could start adding rain. So we're going to take a look at the shot and think about what areas the rain would actually be interacting with inside our scene. More complex scenes could have a lot of objects needing rain to be hitting it and interacting. With our shot, it's just the ground, so it'll be a little bit easier. Another element we're thinking about is the sky. And we do see the sky in this shot, but since we opted for more of a mysterious look in the end, we decided to leave the sky completely black. But in most cases, I would want to add a little something up there to build more depth and detail into the shot, like we've shown on the show plenty of times. And as an example, here it is with and then without. It really makes a massive difference. And we got the sky image from Pond5, who is also today's sponsor. Pond5's mission is to create world-class storytellers, and they do that by supplying the world's largest footage collection with over 30 million clips, all made by artists for artists. And this is premium quality stock media, not just videos, but also photos, After Effects templates, 3D models, and something we also use today, their sound effects. Here we searched for some rain sounds and just grabbed what we needed, just paying per item. And that's another thing that I love from them. You get a lot of flexibility in payment. You can pay per item, which I've done a ton for this episode and a lot of my other short films like Portal Combat and our Action Month. But you can also save some money using credit packs or choose a membership. They have amazing tools as well, like their visual search. And of course, this is all yours to use anywhere for professional and personal projects across all platforms forever. And to top it off, they have a great collection of free assets you can use right now. But better still, you can get access to all of their endless assets with 20% off your first purchase from Pond5 by using the link in the description below.
Emily, that's not helping.
Pissing me off.
Nothing is changing.
Pissing me off.
But moving from the sky back to the ground, we're going to fill out this area with some rain ground assets from Action VFX. They have a bunch from different heights and angles, and since our shot is pretty wide with a lot of ground and frame, we're going to be scaling down the assets to make the rain droplets the correct size for their distance from the camera. Then, since these assets are the standard VFX assets on a black background, we'll toss them into screen blending mode and then use a mask to isolate just a section of the ground contact area, then increase the feather. We want these to be a lot more subtle, so using a curves effect will lower the brightness to just get the highlights out of the water, and then we're going to be lowering the opacity as well. After that, we're going to duplicate and move to fill another area. You can do this for the entire shot, moving each layer in the timeline to shift the sync, making each seem unique, or you can replace some sections with different ground assets from the same sort of angle to add more visual variation. If you drag and drop while holding the Alt key, you can replace the layer but keep any masks and effects that you've already added. At the edge of the building, we did use a low angle ground asset, again masking and feathering, lowering the brightness and opacity, and matching the rotation of the shot. Then duplicating for the other side where the building meets the ground as well. With this being a night scene, any rain in the air would be most visible around areas of light like in these areas. A quick way to do this is to use a rainfall asset. We're using Rain Wide 2 here, placed a bit higher in the frame and masking away the bottom section with a high feather.
Mr. Worldwide!
Duplicate your footage, placing it directly beneath the rain, then use a fast blur with a high value to expand the bright areas, and a curves effect to boost the brightness and add contrast. Then set the layer to Lumimat, which means it will only be visible within the lighter parts of the asset above, so in this case, the brighter the raindrops, the more visible the blurred footage will be. We used curves on the rain layer as well to add contrast. How bright or dark you make it will control how subtle or noticeable the effect will be. Now set the footage layer to screen, and you always have the option to change the footage blur amount as well as layer position and scale if you want different areas for the rain to be visible, as well as changing the rain curves effect for strength. For more variety, we can duplicate these two layers and move them above the Roto layer. We swapped the rain asset with Rain Wide 3 and altered the footage blur and curves to be more widespread and subtle. To add more depth, we can use these wide, medium, and close assets that were perfect for building up distance, so we just layered them up by setting the blending modes to screen, changing scale and position if needed, and using curves and opacity to make them more subtle, giving us this. Now it can be very weather dependent as well as visual and narrative choice, but often you can see rain scenes using atmosphere to create extra depth, especially if the main subject is almost silhouetted. A way to get more of this Misty Haze look is by creating a new adjustment layer above everything and using a glow effect. We love Red Giant's optical glow as it gives a lot of control with things like highlights and fall off, so we increased the highlights only to which areas will drive the glow, maxed out the size, then lowered the fall of the glow amount. Duplicate and move this below the Roto layer to add extra atmosphere. Our ground is a bit too bright, so we'll mask off the bottom area with a high feather as well as use curves effect to lower the overall brightness a bit and increase the glow amount. Specifically for our shot here, we have the car headlights aimed toward Emily, and these would be lighting up the rain, so to do this, we will create a new solid layer for a headlights matte and set the blending mode to screen. Use the light sweep effect at a similar direction to the light source and change width and intensity settings to match. We also used a fast box blur to feather out the beam and use a linear wipe effect so that we can change the transition, completion, and feather to cut away the left side of the screen where the light beam wouldn't fall. Now we'll use one of the wide rain assets placed below and set to Lumimat, once again setting to screen, changing contrast, and using another curves to add a warmer tone to match the headlight's color, which gives us this. All that's left for this shot is a grade which can really enhance that night rain look. Another thing which can give a different look is the glow strength. A higher amount gives a heavier atmosphere look similar to this shot in Prisoners, but for our scene we wanted a dark horror vibe, so we kept this glow amount pretty low. For the knife close-up, we did a similar sort of thing, rotoed Emily and the knife, added a few layers of rain beneath the roto, this time scaling them up and using a camera lens blur effect on one layer to knock it out of focus a bit, as well as using one of the rain close assets above everything and a duplicate scaled more and with another camera lens blur effect to add depth. One thing that did help sell this shot a ton was getting her hand wet so that there were practical drips in camera, giving us a more connected interaction. We also used these top two asset layers for the car shot with Josh just to add some extra foreground elements, only this time flipping them horizontally and using a curves effect to increase the green channel to match the onset lighting. But that's it, getting a rain scene without any rain, and by mixing some in-camera rain for the close-ups and the digital for the wide, we were able to get a pretty effective overall look. As always, links to everything in the notes below. If you aren't subscribed, consider doing that and hit the bell button so you're notified when we put up more content. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.
You just speak in tongues?
Hello, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus. Yes, Lord.
Looking at me?
I'm looking at you.
Stop it.
Nope.
Are you ready?
For what?
We're gonna shoot it.
Oh, it's time to shoot. Gotta
Time to
go.
shoot. Bye.
Bye.